Welcome, everyone. I'm Pamela Anderson, ISV and Alliance Partner and Developer Communications Lead. I want to welcome you to our DevTalk webinar. Today, our presenter, Raghav Shankar, is going to discuss Zebra's Pallet and Parcel mobile dimensioning solutions, made possible by the improved integrated time-of-flight sensor in the new TC501 and 701 devices, and in addition to other devices. A few notes before we begin. This session will be recorded, and all recorded DevTalk webinars are made available on our YouTube channel about 3 to 5 days after the live event. And just as a reminder, everyone is muted. If you have questions, please submit them through the Q&A panel in the Zoom, and we'll address as many as we can at the end of the webinar. For translated captions, click the More button and then Transcriptions from the menu below and select your preferred language in the panel. During the webinar, we're going to share important links to tools and resources, so please keep an eye out for those. And with that, I'll hand it over to our presenter, Raghav.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Thanks for joining us on this DevTalk on mobile dimensioning. Today, we will be talking about the new things and new capabilities that we are coming out with on the mobile dimensioning solution. To start off with, we're going to touch upon some of the previous capabilities that we had to give you where we started off, and then we will get into the new product line. So along with me today, Michael Madagama, who is on the engineering side of the solution, will be joining me to present some of the slides in the later of the presentation. As we did, mobile dimensioning a few years ago, we started off with the platform, the TC73, 78, and 5358, and we have the first integrated time-of-flight sensing on our Zebra mobile enterprise mobile computers, which enabled us to do features like cuboidal parcels and non-cuboidal parcels. So initial release that you guys might have already tried, or some of you might have experienced integrating with into your line of business applications. We released cuboidal parcels. We also did certification on several regions. In US, we did NTAP certification, and we did in Europe, we did OIML and EU certification, and also in the Australia for the cuboidal parcels. As we heard our customers, they were interested to do, they were interested to have the capability of non-cuboidal parcels. So we did add capability for irregular parcels or non-cuboidal parcels later the year in 2022 or so, where we added support for non-cuboidal parcels in the non-certified SKU mode, right? In the non-certified, we go from 10 to 120 centimeters in this platform, TC73, 78, 53, 58, and we had the deviations of 1 to 5 centimeters deviations for those particular capability. We did not certify the non-cuboidal in that feature upgrade, mainly because of the ask and the demand from the customer side of it. But as I said, we have the experience working with, sorry, give me 1 second. So we have experience working with all these certification bodies, and we have done certification for cuboidal, and we know how to do that for non-cuboidal as well, or irregular parcels. And these were the SKUs that were supported for the previous generation. So as we move from this platform to our newer platform, our newer product line, which is 501 and 701, we are integrating a lot of new technology into this new the product line. Starting with the camera, the time-of-flight camera has improved drastically. So from our previous generation platform to the newer generation platform, it has a 4 times higher resolution compared to our previous platform, right? So which basically enables us to do more than what we used to do in our previous platform, which opens up for opportunities like In addition to Q-bottle and non-Q-bottle parcels, we are releasing our first initial release as beta for pallets, right? So we are able to do pallet dimensioning in addition to the same capabilities that we had in our previous platform for Q-bottle and Q-bottle parcels. With a single image capture, you are able to capture the dimensions of parcels from 10 to 120 centimeters. And then now with pallets, with two image captures, you are able to dimension up to 2 meters. In fact, we are testing in our lab, so it can go sometimes up to 2.5, but this is where we are kind of looking at a spec at this time, right? Yeah, with two pictures perpendicular to the pallets, which we have some demo videos in the later of the slides, we'll show you. You are able to dimension pretty quickly within 15 to 20 seconds of the dimension of a pallet. And these two features, again, for this new product line, we are not certifying it, but like our accuracies are still meeting those the deviations requirements from the certification body. Like though we are creating a non-certified SKU or non-certified software, our software is capable of meeting those certified deviation requirements. So it's not just certified because of the requirements and the business case and things like that, but the software is capable of getting certified. Right? And the features that we are looking in the roadmap is our customers have shared that when you're doing pallet dimensioning, they would also look at height only, which is they know the dimensions of the pallet kit. They would be looking for pallet height only. This would come in the later release down the roadmap. And then in addition to that, there are some scenarios that we have seen. The pallets are very close to each other. They want to have a user to manually singulate or identify the boundaries for pallet. So we will have these features in the roadmap as well. And some of the SKUs that we are seeing for 501, 701, this is just a subset. It's just to give you guys an idea of what this looks like. But there's a lot more SKUs or a lot more variations of SKUs available on our system. Like reach out to your local partners or local partner, Zebra associates, or your account teams to be able to reach out and identify what the right SKU for you. Right? This is the time of flight SKU. Again, like I said, 501 and 701 series. From the hardware perspective, both are same capability. The 701 is much more rugged compared to 501, right? That's the fundamental difference in terms of the hardware itself. Again, there are different variations of barcode imagers and time of flight sensors that you can combine and use it across this different SKUs. And within 501, 701, again, if it depends on your use case, if it's within the four walls, you would go in with a LAN SKU. And if it's outdoors, you would be looking at a WAN SKU kind of configuration. Okay. And here are some of the use cases that we think, even though it's not a legal for trade, there are a lot of potential in terms of the mobile devices or mobile dimensioning, enabling the customer use cases. Like, for example, pallet audits in the crosstalk. If a pallet comes into your crosstalk and you want to do auditing and see if those pallet dimensions are as has been from the bill of lading, right? To be able to validate and verify. And in fact, we think or we believe that there's a huge potential for the customers where the pallet picking is the use case, right? So drivers equipped with mobile devices where they're picking up pallets from the customer side or from the businesses. These dimensions can be captured right at the time of pickup. We have seen drivers spending more than 15 minutes to be able to process these pallets. Our system is able to capture within 15 seconds of a dimension for a pallet. All this information can pass downstream for your trailer planning, your load efficiencies, and things like that pretty quickly, right? And in addition to that, if any differences in terms of what is being published in the bill of lading, it could be resolved at the time of pickup itself, hence reducing all the choke points in the further down the lane in the freight carrier. And one other important use case that we think is definitely a value addition to our customers is the warehouse, distribution center, and retail, or even manufacturing in that case. As we are adding the capability for cuboidal, non-cuboidal, and now pallets, uh, it could it could be a value add for customers in the warehouse, distribution, or even the manufacturing space where they're shipping out pallets or where they're shipping out individual items. All of these are dimensioned and created with the right shipping label so that the downstream is choke free, right? So it's frictionless, right? So you do not want to send something that is in inaccurate dimensions downstream and then being held up by the freight carriers with incorrect dimensions. So it's going to cost a lot of money in terms of being the freight and the inventory not being passed to the right time, right? So again, like I said, since we cover all three different the variations of parcels, cuboidal, non-cuboidal, and the pallet, it gives the full flexibility for the manufacturers to look at it as a use case for them. And here's what we also see that as a use case I was talking about, being a distribution center or e-commerce, you pick up, there's an order that comes in to pick up a flower vase. User can pick it up. The picker goes, picks it up, dimensions it, finds the right package, right box it, and then you can actually dimension the box and then either ship the box with the right shipping label to reduce any frictionless shipping, or if you're shipping a bunch of things to a retail store through a palletized freight, you can dimension the pallet as well, again, with the right shipping label and right bill of lading, right? Kind of reduces the friction during the transit. Uh, as I touched upon in the previous slides, like pallet picking, sorry, give me once. Pallet pickup use case is definitely a value add, and being picked up at the source reduces the friction, avoiding any billing disputes can be reduced. And like I said, as you are picking up, the dimensions, the volume, you can efficiently plan your trailers, fuel costs, and all this can be managed efficiently, right? So not bringing out to the cross-dock and then figuring out does not fit, or how does this manage and how many trailers you need to plan. This can be done very, very early on as the pallets being picked up, right? And like I said, pallet audit is a spot check way of validating some of the pallets in the cross-dock. And as I touched upon, warehouse optimization, as we know, the real estate space cost is going up every year. Optimizing your warehouse space optimization is critical for businesses, right? So knowing how much space a customer is leveraging in your distribution or warehouse is critical for these use cases. And we have heard some customers talking about forklift, safeties and things like that when you're lifting up pallets and loading upon the racking base, knowing the exact dimensions can avoid any accidents for the forklift drivers. Right? Um, Here's a quick video. This you guys have seen this probably in the previous couple of sessions that we did on the mobile dimensioning. So this is the it's an extension of what that is. With a single image capture, you're able to dimension irregular or regular boxes pretty quickly, right? With a single picture capture, you get all three dimensions, length, width, and height. And like I said, the dimension range goes from 10 to 120 centimeters in the single image capture without palletized freight. Right? And the second video is just, again, we are also seeing a huge value in terms of the dimensioning. As we are seeing, it covers cuboidal, non-cuboidal, and the pallets. Airline is another customer segment. We believe that is a huge value. I mean, huge. It benefits them a lot more in terms of the dimensioning, right? So, for example, baggage fit, right? So when you go in gate check it, is the baggage being big or small? Like today they use that cabins where you drop it in and check if it fits into it, right? But this is in a scenario that the customers can leverage, specifically in terms of airline use cases. So next, we are looking at, so as I said, as the 501 and 701 progresses with the newer camera, better camera sensors, we have added new capabilities. As I'm going to run this video, you will see uh, um, two modes. You see one picture capture mode and two picture capture mode. With one picture capture mode, as you were doing non-palletized freight, it's typically all the parcels that we saw in the previous slide. Now with two picture capture mode, you're able to capture pallets. Start with one side of it, get your length and height, then go to the other side and take another picture. You get length, width, and height dimensions pretty quickly, right? And here's another video where you can dimension any types of freight. Take one picture and then go to the other slide and take another picture. Sorry, another side and take another picture. And by the way, during those dimensions, you will get all those kinds of different feedback, which allows you to it allows the operators to adjust and require to take a dimension. In addition to this, dimensions, regular length, width, and height, volumetric dimensions, we are exploring capabilities which is not available at this time, but I'm gonna give you like a little preview where we are looking at an AI capability of not just dimensioning pallets, but also identifying every single elements of things that we see in the pallet. Like for example, here, when I'm dimensioning a pallet, I can identify and segment a pallet skid. I can identify and segment a non-cuboidal, which it's a cube or a non-cube. Then I can identify and segment cones, and all this information is going to be passed in while the dimensioning is taking place, right? And this could be an extension feature that could be a premium outside of what the regular offering of dimensioning is as part of the 701 and 501. That this is still in the early phases of it. The idea is that whether the pallet can be stackable, non-stackable, or you could leverage this for any other business use cases, like is the pallet being damaged or is the pallet being shipped in a certain way, right? Even from the manufacturing perspective, if you're shipping a pallet that is non-stackable, or manufacturing, you're shipping a pallet that's not stackable, you're gonna get charged of certain surcharge, right? So all of those use cases can be managed through this. So as per our data today, if you look at our get dimension API, you get the length with an height. We are looking to extend that as an extension feature as an AI, but this will be a separate offering, in not a standard offering. It could be a premium offering. Here's another perspective that we just talked about. Like here's an example where, let's say, a e-commerce scenario or a distribution scenario where there's an order that has come in for you to ship a toaster, and the user comes and picks up the toaster, finds the right dimensions for the toaster. He gets the dimensions and he finds the right package. Like, does it fit into the right package? So finding a package for the things that you're shipping is a use case that could be very well used. Now you can ship the box with the right label by dimensioning the box itself, right? Or if you decide that you want to ship that as a pallet, now you can palletize them and then take two pictures within the same solution and create a label for that as well. One thing that I missed to say that is, like, if you had an app built in the 73, 78, 53, 58 platform, the same app is going to be leveraged or can be leveraged because the APIs are same. Most of the there might be some things that we could be adding like parameters, but the fundamental APIs remain the same. So if you have an app that works on the previous generation platform, it will work on this newer platform, which will also allows you to get the dimensions of pallets, right? So that is something that I wanted to call out there. So here's a slide I want to like touch base quickly on this, the legal for trade and not legal for trade, the benefits and the challenges that we see as we've been doing this for quite some time, specifically on the mobile space of mobile dimensioning. In case of certified legal for trade, we know that it's direct for revenue for recovery. It's a cost that you can charge for the dimensions, but then it also brings in a baggage of challenges. Like for example, at every sites, like in US, there's an specific regulation, and in Europe, there's a specific regulations, right? For example, a yearly re-verification process needs to be done, right? It's a huge cost. Like in the case of mobile, you need to make sure your if your devices are being used, if these are not being taken care, you can't use it for your operation. So it kind of limits from the business sides of it, though there is a certain benefits, but there are really a lot more hurdles in terms of using the system itself, right? And then of course the software update's going to be limited. You're not going to get features like as we are putting out like a pallets or anything, because it's going to be feature logged, because every new feature that is going to impact your metrology, that needs to be go through a recertification process. It's a huge time consuming cost, high cost process, right? So it's a very cumbersome process. And then of course, if you send any devices for repairs, and if any of those devices are repaired and any of the metrological component are touched, it has to go through for a recertification. That's where we are starting with non-certified, and then I think we see a lot more use cases and opportunities for customers, like I just talked about in the previous slides. And the outcomes or the side effects are really small. Like it's just like another BSP update, another OS update that you're getting right on a regular basis. You're going to get fixes, you're going to get regular updates. So all of that is possible, and still be able to leverage this for your revenue. It is not maybe a direct revenue, but it could be impacting all your trailer planning and all the stuff that we just talked about, right? And I'm just going to cover two more slides, and then Michael is going to take on. And here are some of the things that we do already support. From the previous platform to this platform, it's the same camera system. It's a time-of-flight camera based on the IR-based illumination system. IR at a 940 nanometer has certain limitation that it would not work very well on the low reflective targets. But as you guys know, that this is a higher resolution, more pixels here, and then more performance, right? So there is a better performance compared to the previous platform, but there's a fundamental physics behind that system. There are some limitations there, right? So again, QBottle, you do all this support. In non-QBottle parcels, we do support all those different types of things. Some of the things that we do not support is if it's really thin stuff like apparels less than 5 centimeters, less than 10 centimeters. I know we have a better resolution. We are working with our engineering team to see if we can go down. But at this time, these are the things that we feel like there's some challenges at this time. Again, though we call out a weight scale, if the weight scale is large enough, you should be able to still dimension it and implement a tear or an offset feature on the application when the dimensions do come to you. That's possible. But if the scale itself is a very shiny thing, it could cause a blinding effect for the camera. That is where we are just calling out that. And in terms of pallets, these are the pallets that we do support, like cuboidal, pyramid, all these different types of pallets, cylindrical pallet, and the retail side of it, wraps, and all these different pallets. And by the way, we have talking to a bunch of customers. We are doing pilots on. We are seeing a lot of data, and we're learning and improving our software as we speak. Some of the things, again, we believe that could be a challenging. There are certain, we're still looking for some more data, being captured. But based on the system, we believe that this could be a challenge because of so disjoint and irregularities in the system. Again, like going back to the fundamental physics of the camera, this will not produce enough information for us to be able to use it. And keep in mind, this is an integrated camera. This is not like your external camera or a large camera system. It's a very it's like a regular camera phone, right? Your camera on your phone, right? Which is doing a pretty good job compared to any the large stuff. One of the things that we would like to call out is the initial release that we are calling out. We want to make sure that when you're capturing dimensions of a pallet, there's a minimum of 12 inches spacing required between the pallet. Like I said, like here, if it's too sticking to the wall, it may be the system may have a hard time differentiating the edges of the pallet. We are looking at building some of the new features called non-singulation, in the sense that when you're taking a picture, can the user be able to adjust the region of interest for us to dimension it? But again, keep in mind that if there's a user error, there could be an outcome there that we are still exploring that piece still. Again, today we do not support pallet dimensioning on a forklift. If it's being placed on a forklift and being lifted, or even if it's pallet, again, forklift is too close to a pallet, again, because of the 12 inches requirement, this might be a challenge. Same thing with the hand truck. And Michael, if you can cover this, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Raghav. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Some of the tips or the recommendations that you could follow once this solution is being released with beta mode supporting Pallet, that would help to get a bit better results. So the fundamental requirement is that the Pallet use case need to have a Pallet skid that is visible to the camera, and what kept on top of the skid as long as that freight is one of the supported freight, it would give you a dimension. But having these recommendations being followed would help to get you accurate results, as well as it will increase the scope that it supports. So first thing is like having, so like Raghav mentioned, the workflow is like you need to capture two sides, perpendicular sides, not parallel side. Like you can go to the first side and then you can go either to left or right. So the first thing I would recommend, capture the freight and the pallet within the rectangular outline that you can see. So get the pallet and the freight inside the rectangular shape outline. Also, the other factor is like leave a space in front of the pallet skid containing the flow. Keep it blank without any other object or obstacle, but having the flow being visible. And the third would be it not necessarily you have to be like very aligned to the skid to the frame of the front face of the frame or the terminal. It could have some tolerance, but having that being alignment of the pallet skid front face to the camera would give you a better best results. So that is like the very fundamental thing to be followed, so that it will give you best results. So assuming freight is like a tall freight, like you see in the left image, so the recommended mode of operation or the orientation of the device would be portrait, so that you can capture as many of the freight and the pallet filled with the field of view. So that is the recommended method for this kind of pallet. And if you go for the right-hand picture where you capture the isometric view, it is not something that we recommend, because the fundamental workflow would be like capture from one side parallel to the one skid and go to the right angle. But having this isometric view doesn't follow that, the workflow, and it's not something that we would recommend. So capture as parallel as to the freight and the skid. So yeah, so if you can go to the next slide. So there's other scenario that your freight might be not tall, but it might be wider pallet, including the freight. So in that case, use the same principle. Fill as much as possible the freight and the skid with the field of view. So the recommended mode would be landscape mode. So you can fill as much as possible. The other principles are similar. So capture as parallel as to the front face of the skid, and filled everything, the freight and the skid, within the rectangle. Leave some space to the front face so that you have enough information to get the accurate dimension. But just that it's the palette is a wider palette and could be short, so use the landscape mode. You still could get portrait mode, but there may be challenges, like you can see in the right hand image, like some of the part may get cropped. You cannot get everything into the frame layout. So it will be naturally, it might be not that feasible to get everything into the scene. So the free or the recommended or the natural way of capturing would be landscape mode. Can you go to the next one? So yeah, the other one is like whether it is a portrait mode, whether it's a landscape mode, or regardless of the target, always try to aim the reticle at the freight, not the skid, not the flow. Like you can see on the right hand image, it might lead to not to get a measurement if you aim at a pallet, skid, or flow or somewhere else. So better to try to aim at the freight. So you'll get the measurements without any problem. Can you go to the next one? Okay, so this is like we have been discussing, this is a two-sided two capture mode, not a single capture mode. So you need to capture from one side and you have to go to the second side. Depending on the shape of the object, you might get or you might not get the height sometimes based on the shape of the object. Like in this case, it's a pyramid pallet where you have a larger box in the bottom and you have a smaller box in top of it. So in the first capture, you might not get the full height that you can see from the bounding rect, that it does not cover everything. But don't worry, it's not an inaccurate measurement, because to get the accurate measurement, you have to follow the whole workflow, meaning that you have to go to the next side and get the capture. So when you go to the next side and capture, the height, width, length, and everything will be corrected and will give you the accurate measurement. So having the first capture will give you like intermediate results, but completing the workflow, meaning that you capture the both sides, will give you the final and confirmed results. Okay, so yeah, then let's go into the API, which is important factor for the application development, line of business application development using the solution. So for this 501 solution that has the Pallet as beta mode and also the Parcel that was being supported in the previous generation, it does not have any additional API update. Whatever already been published, which is the 2.2 version of API, is anyway going to be supported for the new platform device as well. However, there were some changes on top of 2.2, which was the previous release that we have done. So that was being covered in the previous webinar, but we have updated the version for 2.2. So the 2.2 version, which is the latest API version being released, has some updates. So like you can see, like the intent, the Zebra Parcel Dimensioning has been deprecated, and now we have it has been replaced with Zebra Dimensioning Intent API. That is one of the change. And then some of the parameters have been updated. Earlier it was Parcel ID in the Get Dimension API that has been deprecated and replaced with Object ID. And then the third API update is that you have the response for the enable dimension. The results codes on some of has been moved from fail to error. So those you can see what are those changes if you go to the API update. with 2.2. And then the additional response keys has been added, like a legal trade and dimension ID that you can that you will be consumed with dimension response. So those are the API changes. Like I mentioned, these are already been published. There will not be additional APIs going to be applicable for the initial release that is going to support TC501 701. However, like Raghav mentioned, like in the roadmap, there are new features that we will be adding. So those new features may have some API updates to support new features. But for the initial one, there won't be any changes. That's going to be the beauty, because whatever the application that you already have developed for the 501, 5358, you can directly use the same application for the 501 as well without any modification. You simply can consume the Parcel feature as well as the Pallet Beta feature. Okay, so here are some reference. I think those things will be shared after the dev talk as well, like a couple of API. So basically, we are supporting the intent API. You can refer the API guideline. And then there are other modes that you can consume the solutions. So like sample code is there for the GitHub that we are showing here. And you can use the enterprise browser, and there's a React Native module is being published, so you can use that module and the sample application. Consuming that React Native module, you can use the sample application is in GitHub. You can refer that as well. Okay. So yeah, some more reference. The Parcel user guide. These are already been published. Supporting the 5358. So those going to be similar. So one thing is, like, lately we have updated the video guide as well, which was not originally there. So you can refer that as well. That will help to understand the use case, limitations, and how the best practices and everything. So you can refer that. And as we are moving to the support of Pallet, which is going to be our next big release. So with that release, expect the user guide for the Pallet as well as the video guide for the Pallet. As we are publishing that, you can expect these guides as well. So you can refer and consume that as well. Okay, so these are the softwares. So as you already know, the release softwares for 5358, 7378, you can use 1.4, the latest certified SKU. If the use case is to use for legal for trade, you can use that. If the SKU is certified, then the software would be 1.4. Similarly, the latest non-certified non-certified software is 2.2. And then what we are going to release is 3.0 for 501 and 701, which has the Pallet Beta, in addition to the Parcel support. Okay. With that, I think we are concluding what we plan to cover during the session. Now we can open the forum for the Q&A. We can answer the questions that you have.
Great. Thank you, Michael and Raghav. So we do have some questions. We will start with the first one here. And the first question is, does the solution support capturing weight?
So we have done some, like we have worked with partners for integrating the weight scale. The mobile has a Bluetooth capability, and like I shared it in the previous slides, like if you put it on a weight scale and trying to dimension it, there are scenarios where you might be having a shiny surface on the platform, which causes the blindiness. But the mobile device, its Bluetooth capability, should be able to integrate with any existing weight scale. So there are some sample codes, which we will be posting it on the GitHub samples too.
Okay, great. Okay, the second question we received is, does this existing solution support stacked pallets? And does dimensioning distinctly, I guess and does the dimension separate it into
individual
single
container.
pallets. Yeah.
So basically,
Good.
I mean, yeah, as long as you have a pallet, it will, as long as it is within the scope, it will dimension whatever on top of the pallet. It doesn't matter whether you have a pallet or any other freight. But for the moment, it does not separately dimension one pallet by other if you have like two pallets stacked on one on top of it, but everything will be dimensioned as a one. That's the current mode of separate mode.
Okay, so just to understand, so you're saying if there are two pallets stacked, it would read that as a single pallet.
It is, yes.
Okay.
So again, like I mean, if there is an interest and there's a business that you guys think that, I mean, we have seen some of the customers showing us double stack pallets. Would be happy to work with the team who's asking this question. They can reach out to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Third question is, can the system automatically switch between modes, one shot and two shot?
Not today.
Yeah, for the moment, no. It is manual. When you go to the solution in the UI, you have to switch manually. But yeah, I mean, it's something that we can consider in going forward. But as of now, it is not.
Again, since we have all this AI capability that I was just showing, like in terms of identifying the pallet skid and things like that, there is a possibility that we already have the recipes in place to be able to do that, but not today. So we kind of look at that as a stepping with the user able to manually switch between modes. But as we go, as in terms of the roadmap, we probably could introduce as part of an API where if a customer is only doing parcels, they could lock down only for parcels, right? Sort of those kind of things. So we're still exploring those options.
Okay. And the last question we have is, does the lighting in the environment affect the dimensioning scanning?
Generally, no, because the primary source of sensing is time of flight, which is not that very much directly related to the scanning, getting the dimension. However, since we are using the color camera, there may be some effect, like if it is completely dark or like those extreme environments, it may struggle. But in the meantime, we can enable flash that might get recover that part. So I would call it as a limitation, but there may be some challenges. But generally speaking, there won't be much of effect on lighting. But indoor, there may be some differences. But in generally, different light conditions may not that be affecting.
All
So
right.
this,
No.
just to add to that, I think the 940 nanometer IR capability is designed to be work for outdoors too, right? Not for
Right.
a direct sunlight. You're not pointing directly to the sunlight. That's not recommended. I think we have it in our slides. You're
Is.
probably behind sunlights, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
You did mention how if there was anyone that had a stacking pallet solution, and if there was a business need, that you would be open to talking to them, Raghav. So how would someone get in touch with you?
We can pass in our contacts through you, Pam.
Okay, yep. If they're interested, they could also just share their information in the Q&A or chat,
And
and
I
we
can
can
reach
reach
out to
out
them.
to them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. All right. And then we have another question that just came through. Where can I download the app, and is it free?
So this solution is going to be being posted on zebra.com. If you go to zebra.com mobile dimensioning, you will see the current software version is 2.2. We'll be posting, as Michael said, we'll be posting 3.0 probably beginning of next month. And they should be having a 501 and 701 hardware to be able to leverage this.
Okay. I also put in the chat the latest 2.2 Tech Doc link for the downloads information. All right. That is all of the questions that we received right so far. So I want to thank you both for presenting for us today, for our developers. And again, this recording will be posted on our YouTube channel. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.